Hey everyone, welcome back to Clean Techies. It's Silas. Wow, what a week. New York Climate Week was really amazing this year, and I will be putting out a mini episode with some of my key takeaways, but today we are just releasing our live podcast recording from last week. As an editorial note for you, we had some severe technical issues with the recording, equipment that we had planned to use, and as a result, the audio file the only audio file we have is from our backup recording, which is simply just audio from my iPhone. So yes, it's not very professional, certainly a lesson for next time, but at least we do have a recording, so it's better than nothing. So in advance, I do apologize for the very, very poor audio quality of this episode. However, despite that, I am very confident that the quality of the content is definitely up to par, and I hope it will make up for the lack of audio quality. I hope you'll agree with that. As a reminder, our panelists from this event were, I should say, Augustus Derico, the co-founder of Rainmaker, a company doing cloud seeding to make it rain or snow more. Liz Dennett, also a past podcast guest, and the CEO of Endolith, who is helping mining companies increase yield for minimal amounts of dollars using microbes. And then we have Grant Brown, a partner at 8090 Industries, a venture fund with portfolio companies that have absolutely been crushing it this year. And then we have Joel Armin Hoylen, recent podcast guest and founder and CEO of the Climate Finance Solutions Company, a firm that helps clean tech startups land grant funding opportunities from various different government agencies in the US and Europe. And they might even work beyond that, but I know for sure US and Europe. And just as a note on him, he's helped clean tech startups raise over $1.6 billion since 2020. So some very impressive numbers. They're all impressive panelists. And we were talking about how to win in the anti-climate era, given all the changes in the administration and just kind of the change in nature in the market. We wanted to ask these people who have won so much in this past year during the Trump administration, how do you win in the anti-climate era? So both Somil and I are moderators of this discussion. And after you listen, please do let us know what your favorite takeaways are. We thought that there were some really, really interesting points made here. I am really curious to hear what you guys think about it. I will share my own takeaways in the future, but let us know after you listen. And two more things before we get started. We are very excited to partner with Climate Hack for the Hack Summit coming up December 10th and 11th at New Lab in Brooklyn. They are bringing together climate and deep tech experts from all over the world for a 2-day summit, and we will be there creating content with them. Be sure to register today. All you have to do is go to hacksummitny.com for the full lineup of guest speakers and your registration. Also, a big shout out before we start to the sponsors who made this live podcast possible. That's Goodwin, the best law firm for clean tech startups anywhere in the world. CSC Leasing for your heavy equipment leasing needs, especially relevant for any founders building in the hardware space. And then Earth Tech Talent for all of your US recruitment needs without the crazy cost. All right, enjoy the show.
I just want to thank everybody for just coming here and being with us, because doing this is always a little bit nerve-wracking. We're not a big organization. We don't have a lot of staff to do this, but we appreciate everybody showing up. So, and we also want to shout out our sponsors. So I'll give you guys the opportunity to talk about what you're doing.
Awesome. Hi, y'all. So my name is Kelsey. I'm clearly from Texas. And we do CapEx financing. So we do probably 30% of our current portfolio is in kind of the climate space. We do assets from 100,000 up to 50 million. It's completely non-dilutive. Most of our clients are VC and PE-backed companies. And then I travel the globe working with those folks. So I'm kind of the relationship manager there. It's a family that owns and operates us. So their kind of goal is that we will never take equity, no personal guarantees, and no covenants to like a bank would. So very clean. And it is lease structure is the structure of it. So come talk to me if you have questions about debt or even, we do it a large portion of our time sending deals to investors. So if I can be helpful with your raise, please let me know.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dave Brecky, also from Texas. I'm with Goodwin Procter, specifically the climate tech group there. So we're a group of lawyers within a large firm focusing exclusively on climate tech solutions, founders from the earliest stage, the investors, the accelerators, other forms of capital, trying to be the glue, helps connect all that stuff. And by focusing on it, we can be more strategic advisors and not just paper pushers to help you get more out of that relationship. Super needed in the climate space. Very happy to help with all your climate solutions. And great to work with Silas.
Yeah, thanks so much. Also, big round of applause to these guys. They've been on our biggest sponsor for the show. So definitely reach out to a good one if you have any legal needs. And then I am self-sponsoring this too with a recruitment firm I run called Earth Tech Talent. So I run, we help early stage clean tech startups hire executives, salespeople, and then I call it unicorn searches. So, hard to fill engineering roles, etc. We're about half the price of other search firms. So if you do need any recruitment, reach out. But I think are we all set to pretty much keep stuff?
Yeah.
Make sure you guys record button back there, and if everybody can go on do not disturb, would be very pleasant. Thank you very much. All right, so before we do start, I just want to have everybody give a quick round of applause for panelists for coming here. We have a pretty sick lineup. And a little bit of context. So why we decided to put this particular panel together in this discussion is between Soma and I, we've been working in climate for a while. I started in climate in 2020, so I'm not a true OG, but I've been longer than some. And I've been working in recruitment since then. And Soma has seen, hundreds and hundreds of pitch decks in climate as well. And there's one thing that kind of unites all of the companies that actually win, and it's that they figured out a way to actually make money. It's not just about emission reduction. There was a lot of people who came during that bubble of 2020 to 2023 who were here for the vibes, unfortunately. And with the way things are, with the current administration, that's going to change, I think. And that's what we're here to talk about. Because all of these panelists have either done or advised startups in a way that they've actually had big wins this year. So we're going to learn from them, how do you win in the anti-climate era? So with that, I think we'll start with somebody who wants to kick us off.
Awesome. Again, this is awesome. Surely, so one of the vantage points we have is that for many of these folks, we've either spoken directly to them or spoken to folks who have recommended them. So we're going to start off with basically introducing to you guys what are some of the wins and some of the context of why these are the people that you should be listening to. So we'll start off, we can go this way. Just let us know what is one big win you want to highlight in 2025. And of course, the context being that you're probably harder to win right now than it was in 2023. You can imagine. So,
and just a brief intro.
Yeah, so my name is Armin Hoylen. I'm the founder and CEO of Climate Finance Solutions. We're a global consulting firm that helps climate tech companies and organizations secure large-scale, non-dilutive public funding. So that's primarily grants, but also subsidies, tax credits, some government-secured debt as well. Provide services kind of throughout the whole funding life cycle. So everything from strategy and identification through proposals and post-award management as well. So in addition to kind of winning over 50 million in grants this year, mostly state grants, we've won over 80 million in tax credits from the federal government. So not super easy to do to win money from the federal government in this climate, so to speak, or I guess not climate. And then we've also helped kind of in related news, helped a number of companies pivot to Europe as well and help them apply for almost 200 million euros in funding for almost 400 million in total project cost.
Yeah, and if you guys can just take a peek at the board, you can see some of the companies that they've helped there. We got a couple headlines for you.
Awesome. I'll go next. It's a pleasure to speak with you guys all today. I'm Grant. I'm with 89 Industries. We're an early stage industrial deep tech investment firm. I am going to talk anecdotally about the founders who have won this year, right? Like, I want to make sure that we direct questions to these two a lot, and then we'll sit over here and answer questions too. So I don't want to take credit for any of these wins. This is all anecdotal of what I've seen. And obviously I have some opinions and hot takes, and we'll get through all those.
Yes.
But to start, some of the big wins we've seen. We're really proud. We were the largest shareholder in Oklo before they went public. Small modular nuclear reactor company.
Absolutely ripping right now, by the way.
Yeah, they've 10x in the public markets. One of the more successful SPACs in the last however long. My SPAC's a dirty word. Shan. Shout out to Chimana, I guess. But they've been very successful at storytelling and pivoting from a very high climate cycle to a national security AI, AGI cycle. And they've been able to creatively tell the story throughout that both private investors and now public and institutional investors are now rallying around. So that's a big win that we've seen, but we have other portfolio companies doing much the same thing. For context, industrial deep tech has been our tagline since inception. We got a lot of takes around like climate tech, clean tech. I mean, we've always seen it as industrial deep tech and the opportunity to bring innovation into the industrial space to, like Silas said, make money, right? And there's an opportunity to do things cleaner and more efficiently with innovation that allows that to function. So that's us. But yeah, really pumped to be here today. Liz, do you need my mic or you want?
Yeah, let's think about that.
I'm just here because I really like this guy. He's like, I can't pass out those wins. Like, how am I supposed to go after that? My name's Liz. I'm the founder and CEO of Endolith. We are using microbes to get more copper out of low-grade ores using a platform that I think I once called biological intelligence. We combine cloud, we combine institute performance, all of these cool things that sound very scientific. I say it 3 times in a row. A few wins we've had this year, we're probably working with BHP, with Rio Tinto. We had an oversubscribed seed 60 months ago. We're just closing out a Series A, which we've been fundraising for 3 months now, and it looks like it's going to be a little oversubscribed. So that's incredible in this market, which is not the market it was a few years ago. The single thing I'm the most proud of is not the 15 million in revenue we have this year. It is the team. We are right around 18 people based in Denver. Recently, we brought on board a CFO full-time that I got through a friend of a friend. He's Andrew, he's incredible. He was at BHP for 20 plus years as a VP there, leading M&A deals. My head of technology that joined us in the past year, who I also got through word of mouth, she was at Freeport leading the largest deep leaches in the world. And now she is running a team with this little teeny tiny startup. Which I think just goes to the power of how the single thing I'm most proud of the founder is this team that we have. The team is a force multiplier that's enabled us to move faster than any other mighty startup. But going back full circle, if you are at these junctions and looking at where you need to be at scale and you don't have a team that's you are blushing that you're able to be at the tip of the spear and represent that you're not strong by the right people.
Quick shout out to Goodwin Law for sponsoring this live podcast. Goodwin is by far the best law firm to use if you're a climate tech startup or fund. They were the first major law firm to set up a dedicated climate practice, and they have a global practice so that no matter where you are, they can help you. And importantly, they are the best firm to see you through the entire journey. Where most other firms are very helpful at the early stages, they often are not well equipped to help you in the later stages of growth or to help you with your acquisition process once you guys are getting down the road. If you want a legal partner who is committed to your cause and will be there throughout the entire journey, including your global expansion, reach out to Goodwin today. Go to goodwinlaw.com. You should reach out to David Brekke directly. That's David, Brekke, and tell them that Clean Techie sent you. Okay, back to the show.
My name is Augustus Derico. I'm the founder and CEO of Rainmaker. We're a next generation cloud seeding and weather modification company that's making more snow and more rain for farms, ecosystem restoration, aquifer restoration, and hydroelectric utilities throughout the Western United States and now 2 other continents. And on big wins and on your point about team, I guess there's 3 that I'll rip through. First of all, Cargill, that guy right there, he helped us get the first weather modification permit from the Oregon Department of Agriculture in over 50 years, I think 52 years. So that was pretty cool. And then we got the first drone-based commercial cloud seeding program in the world, or in the United States, stood up at the beginning of this year. And we're about to undertake the biggest cloud seeding program in the world outside of China to help restore the Great Salt Lake starting November 1st this year as well.
That's cool.
Yeah, let's get a quick round of applause, please. I was talking about my brother's starting a snow plowing business, so I might need your help. I'm change that and friendly to the snow or something. But let's go into a couple of like how you guys did it. Do you want to start?
Yeah, well, I think we've heard through like comments, and so I think we can start there too. One of the more amorphous things that can happen in any sort of either bear market or downturn is that people from a talent perspective all of a sudden become a little more concerned about the opportunity to join companies that are associated with whatever is not as popular, right? When it's a hot thing, everyone wants to do it. When it's not, it can change perspective. So as you mentioned, some of the most exciting things, the biggest points might have actually been the people themselves. And I'm curious, as founders and as people who work with founders, how have you adapted to either pitching this talent, getting them in? How do you massage whatever's happening right now in your sort of persuasion, or maybe they're coming knocking to your door, get that awesome. So maybe Liz, you started with it if you want to take that away.
Which we actually, I had a lot of people excited to write LinkedIn. Yeah, an incredible intern this summer who left us to go do his PhD. But he was an incredible computer scientist who was living to my DMs. Our team's 70% female, which in an industry is historically 15% female. Yeah, we are not majority. There are actually female founders less than 2% of all founders. So it feels very, very scalable. Around talent and around those pieces, when I got into my late 30s, I don't know how old most of you are. I feel like everyone's just my age. So something strange happened when I turned 35, 36, 37. I think I got feral and stopped giving a fuck about what people thought. And I realized that as someone that is child free by choice, I needed to have some kind of legacy on the planet. And I needed to really look at what I wanted to do with my life. I can't keep houseplants alive. I can't crochet. I have 2 dogs. So what is that thing going to be? And I realized it was time to stop asking for forgiveness or permission and just go do it. If people didn't like it, I didn't really care. That authenticity has resonated so much. And so when I talk to people, or when I talk to potential people coming in, there's no secret about what they get. I'm an astrobiology PhD with purple hair that has very strong opinions about so many things. That is my professional persona. That is my private life persona. And if you are not on board with that, it's totally fine. There's so many other companies you can work for. But if you are on board with that, my dogs are going to come to the office. I'm occasionally going to drop F-bombs in town halls. And I am going to work harder than anyone else that you've ever met in your entire life, because this is my passion, this is my calling, this is all I've ever wanted in my life. And I just say that unapologetically. I say that on LinkedIn, I say that here, I say that everywhere. And that is something where I have found that people respect that and they get it, or they want nothing to do with you. And that self-selecting bias is part of why my team does in many ways look and talk and act a little bit more like me, just in terms of being female. We have a lot of non-binary people on our team, as opposed to what you typically see in the mining world. And you know what? I think that's really cool, because it's the first time in my life I've had a company culture where you walk in and you hear laughter. I outfitted a pull-up bar in the lab because I've been doing a lot of pull-ups this year, and it's a great company. I can do that. And I got one of our lab techs, Doug, who's in his 60s, to do his first pull-ups at this point in his life. I'm like, that's just cool. It's a weird amalgamation of who I am. Also, if you remember to pull up, nothing is more free than going up to like a crowded gym and just like whipping out 4 or 5 pull-ups and just like walking away. That's probably another big win I should have talked about. It's quite having me kid.
Yeah.
These are big wins. Big wins.
Yep.
Anyway, I digress.
I love it, guys. Feel free to jump in.
Yeah.
Wants to. We don't have to really make this too gross. So perfect.
I'm going to be very, very brief, and I want Augustus to talk about talent, being a talent magnet and hiring. I think as an investor, it's something that we look at the earliest stage, right? The company is going to espouse the beliefs, the character, and the work ethic of their founder. That is a reality. At 8090, I think we take a very hard stance that we do not want to make CEO changes. We are not in the business of changing your vision of your company. And so when I screen somebody at a pre-seed level and it's 3 guys or gals in a garage, do I think that amongst that group they have what it takes to, yes, grow and become, better at certain administrative tasks, but do they have the spikiness in the fire to take the company all the way to the promised land? And I think, these founders are exactly that, right? Like mullet, purple hair, very, very spiky individuals, strongly opinionated, but they're going to win, and they don't take losing. That's fine, and that's a big deal for us. So,
yeah, on the point of not taking losing as final, we have one corporate value at Rainmaker, which you may have heard before, and it's that we like the taste of blood in our mouth. And it's deliberately psychotic sounding. One, because it filters out very well, because somebody hears that and then they go, what the fuck? And probably not that right. But the meaning of that is, and it reflects itself in our hiring insofar as, like, if you do not just endure failure, if you do not just tolerate it and move on from it, but actually love the sensation of that difficulty and that opportunity to learn, sort of like how, as Rocky gets punched in the face more times, somehow he fights harder. That will create a corporate culture where sometimes if things go wrong, the drones crash, if we have logistics issues or otherwise, if a sitting U.S. congressperson decides to make you their number one enemy, which happened at Rainmaker, then you can actually have a lot more fun and more effectively fight through that process. And that reflects in our hiring. Garrett just the other night, for example, I think he had boarded a plane at like 11. What time was it? 10:30. And I think had a glass of wine, was going to sleep on the red eye to come out here to climb week. And then I texted him and I was like, hey, I need all of these things now. And then he stayed up for the red eye to get that done. And so there's a table stakes amount of integrity, of intelligence, of experience that I look for, obviously, but more than anything else, I care about it. Building a company, if you're being as aggressive and ambitious as you ought to be, I think it should be excruciatingly difficult. And if you don't have the grit to see that through, then you're doomed from the start.
I do want to quickly add both you guys on that.
We reframe that. We have three core corporate values. One is safety is not negotiable. Two is we love critical feedback. And three is we also love snacks. So we frame it since we're Denver, we love type 2 fun. The fun that's not fun when you're doing it, but it's fun afterwards. But it's the exact same thing.
So do you know type 3 fun?
Yeah, I know type 4 fun.
What's that for?
One of them is things that are fun now, fun forever, and the other one is things that are never fun and never will be fun.
I think that's type 3. So type 3 is like Ernest Shackleton's adventure to the poles, right? Like that's Rainmaker fun. Yeah.
Whereas type 4 is like, this is fun. This is always fun. It's always going to be the best thing ever. My puppy, she is type 4 fun through and through. But that is what it is. And we also have a sign when you walk in that says, we're not doing this because it's easy. We're doing it because we thought it would be easy. Mm-hmm. So we're both psychotic.
When it comes to attracting the town, though, the thing I'm curious about is I don't know if this necessarily perfectly applies to other maybe some of your portfolio companies, but for anybody who started out with like we're purely focused on the client challenges and getting that kind of group of people to come to you, how do you end up attracting people from the industry who are been in mining for 20 years and you need their Rolodex? Like, are there any particular things that you do to get them interested? Do they reach out to you mostly? Do you have to go out and find them?
Well, so Rainmaker was started after like climate tech kind of peak. We started in the spring of 2023. So we never actually branded as like climate first. And I think that kind of exemplifies a trend that I hope more climate tech companies take up, which is not trying to solve climate problems first, but trying to solve real problems, because that will bear fruit in any market, right? Like mining is going to be relevant no matter whether there's a bull or bear cycle of climate. Everybody always needs critical minerals, and then you can especially play into the national security angle is popular now, but you don't even need to. Like, I think that, yes, it would behoove any founder in any company not to ride a hype cycle to get more talent or to get cheaper capital. But if you just solve a real problem, then you will make real money, you'll have tangible results and solutions, and then persist throughout all of the political fluctuations that inevitably occur.
I think some of it also is not necessarily about whether climate is cool or not, but like what does the macroeconomic trend look like? We have actually hired a bunch of really great people from the Department of Energy that got RIFT, reduction force, as they call it, and so we've benefited greatly from that. We actually introduced some people to our clients from the government who also have been RIFT. There's a lot of layoffs in academia right now for various reasons, including government funding issues. So there's a lot of really great PhDs and postdocs and even like former professors out there looking for work, and some degree likes the economic downturn in some areas. of the economy also means that people are looking for work. So to some degree, it's not even as much of is climate cool or not. It's like, what does the overall hiring environment look like? And for us and for a lot of our clients, it's actually not terrible right now, whether you're leading with climate or not.
Yeah. Did you want to take the discussion in that direction? We got lots of points here.
Yeah, I think so. Actually, on that, one point we wanted to keep in mind also is the idea that when you are working in this space, at times you are working with government, and that's a very complicated relationship right now. So honestly, on that note, what is the relationship you're seeing right now between the way that you navigate what are currently bipartisan? You can also think and name for the crowd sort of what might you think are bipartisan issues truly, but then also where like interesting insights you found about things that are spiky, things that have opportunity, maybe things that get people to still care about climate in this age.
Yeah, so I mean, the administration has been pretty clear about the things that are related to climate they want to fund, right? Nuclear, geothermal, they put out $1 billion worth of grants for critical minerals, hydro, grid technology. Hydro, grid technologies, obviously AI data centers, oil and gas. There's some climate stuff might fit in oil and gas, like carbon capture and CCUS. Also, ag has kind of long enjoyed bipartisan agreement, and there's grants coming out from the USDA right now. Manufacturing things that like have to do with jobs. So there are quite a few bipartisan climate elements. I think that the key, as we've kind of been discussing, and I think we will continue to discuss, is how do you frame these things and how do you approach government and the other folks that you're partnering with, whether the government or not, that are maybe not as interested in climate, don't care about climate at all, or are actively opposed to climate. How do you approach that with the requisite form of intelligence in terms of understanding where they're coming from? There's actually a difference in terms of who you're talking to in government. When you're talking to the program managers that have been there for many, many years, there's a kind of language that you use. We're not kind of like using the climate language, but these are professionals that actually do care about climate. And so you can kind of use, you don't have to be so careful about your language. Whereas if you're talking to some of the political appointees, as we have done with our portfolio company, with our clients, you get much more careful about your language and be very use energy dominance and all of the keywords that you also have to use in applications. So it's a really interesting, it is definitely an interesting relationship, and we're fortunate that we've been working with government for long enough that we understand these things, and we all have a lot of great former DOE and former government people that have all their single chats that I'll just keep up to date on what we should be talking about.
Yeah, I think we at 8090 sit in an interesting intersection between aerospace defense and energy. And I think there's a lot to be learned for climate tech, clean tech startups from the way that some of these defense tech startups have engaged with the DoD, local municipalities, states, in a way that, like I said, we're industrial deep tech through and through. If you happen to be clean, that's awesome. If you happen to be building aerospace systems, that's also awesome. And I think the more that climate tech can look like industrial tech, local regulators will want to work with you to build industry in their state, in their county, and in their region, in their district, because that means more jobs, that means more prosperity in the area. And that's one thing that I think got missed in this little bit of downturn with climate tech, is that you are building large facilities, producing commodities, producing products that are very much needed. And you're going to need to staff employees to do that. You're going to need to build infrastructure to do that. And the government is more than willing to work with you if you don't just focus on the DOE Loan Program Office only, right? And so I think there's an interesting opportunity for climate tech to look more like industrial tech, which mirrors some of the wins in defense tech. That all comes together towards prosperity and abundance, which is what, those are energy dominance, prosperity, resilience, and abundance. Those are the new decarbonization terms and monikers used in the government today. So I think, founders would love to tap in on that. And we have, I'm not the guy to talk about procurement, the DoD. We've got a guy on my team who's a killer. I would love to put you guys in touch and think about government engagement strategy as you continue to build. But I think there's a real there there. It's not murky at all. There's a clear path, and I think in the future many climate tech companies will espouse that and walk accordingly.
And I think that's actually been the pitch when you're working with local government forever, right? Like whether it's no matter if it's the Biden administration or Trump 1 or Obama, like when we talk to local governments about building stuff in their jurisdiction, depending on who they are. You know, in Berkeley, yeah, we talk about climate a lot. We're for a company that was based in Berkeley. But when you're outside of Berkeley, like we were doing projects in Kern County, like you're talking about economics, you're talking with the Kern County Economic Development Council, right? Like this has been, it's not like a lot of this stuff is really new, right? The nomenclature changes, but there are these kind of consistent through lines of how you win in general across eras.
Quick shout out to CSC Leasing for sponsoring this live podcast. CSC is a leading specialty finance company focused on equipment and technology leasing. They've partnered with companies of various sizes and stages in the clean tech industry, providing non-dilutive capital solutions that enable them to maintain equity and scale their businesses. With over $1 billion in assets under management, they support the vision of hundreds of entrepreneurs each year using their own capital, which gives them the latitude and ability to support companies in an ever-changing marketplace. If you're building some sort of hardware solution, it's important to get in touch with Kelsey at CSC Leasing so that you have the solution ready at your fingertips whenever you need it. Just go to cscleasing.com to get started. That's cscleasing.com to get started. Okay, back to the show.
So, critical minerals are a huge bipartisan issue. They're a huge issue that affects everyone. This is Dynamite. We're going to talk about copper for 10 seconds. Copper is what we are focused on. Everything that you are experiencing right now has some form of copper in it. The lights have copper, channeling electrons. These microphones have copper in them. We have no way to meet the copper demand that's been historically forecasted. Throw in AI. Every data center takes 10 to 15 tons of copper. Electric vehicles take 5 to 10 times as much copper. Wind turbines take copper. We cannot even our way through copper. Yes, some chip manufacturers have ways that you can use less copper, but the copper is the backbone of both every electrical system we have and in developing nations. It is the fundamental backbone. And when we think about bipartisan issues, when we think about the geopolitical wrinkles, right now China controls 60+% of the global end-to-end copper supply chain, which means we have to get access to copper. We actually have a wealth of copper in the US, but we only get about half of it out, which is where we come and getting more. One of the big issues, though, to tackle straight on is that going back to the talent piece, I was once interviewing someone for our company, and she was like, "Hey, Liz, no offense, but every time something, no offense, but it's going to be great." It's like, I'm assuming, no offense, but if you're successful, that means there's going to be more mines in the yard, and I'm super progressive and don't really want mines in my backyard. And I was like, cool. Let's unpack this. And this goes back to that point about things that truly are rising from the small shifts. I grew up in the US, I grew up in Montana, Alaska. By nature of that, my copper and critical mineral footprint is probably an order of magnitude bigger than someone in developing nation. If I lived in Nicaragua, I would use significantly less copper. I'm also guilty of Amazon priming and nesting things like charging cords that I might not need that I want. And I get a new cell phone in 2 or 3 years. I have a disproportionately larger critical mineral footprint than citizens of a lot of people on the planet. Is it fair that that goes to the DRC or sub-Saharan Africa, somewhere where we don't see it, we don't touch it, we don't have child slavery laws, we don't have OSHA, we don't have requirements? Is that fair? As a citizen of the planet, I don't actually think so. Is it fair that living in Colorado, I have to see mines and know people that have jobs in mines and can benefit in second and third orders from that economic prosperity while making sure we can do it in a way that's environmentally favorable? Hell yeah, like that is a yes in my backyard type of world I want to live in. It also has the second and third order effects of ensuring that we have options to mine in the US with some of our allies in South America, and we can de-risk a lot of these supply chains. That is the language, and that is the framing I use more from a curiosity and holistic perspective, because the climate tech thing is great, but in many ways it's just state of state. We're going to do what we can to make the choices that are great for the environment. taking that and really providing some education around how much more wrinkled the geopolitical overlay is with economic development, both domestically and abroad, I think is where that magic really comes out.
And so if we're, all of you here in the audience, we probably either interact with founders and play a role in supporting operators and startups. So does that mean that when you say, so interact with local municipal government, it's, walk in the door at their office and say, I have jobs? Like, how do you work with said local regions?
So I'll speak to our perspective. We had Overture come in and co-lead our seed round for our Series A. We're actually working a lot more with national security and defense tech VCs, which most generalist climate VCs don't understand. They're like, that's a noggin scratcher of a choice. Why would you do that? But they have the connections. They know the DoD, also the Department of Interior people that we can call. And so for us, seeking out investors that are very strategically minded, that have the Rolodex, we can do the mining, we can do the heavy technology, but I don't get an SBIR grant. I can't tell you which loan program office is in. There's like 57 different offices and it changes every day. That's not something that I want to spend my time doing. So we have to take that to the experts. If we didn't have these investors, we'd probably be talking a lot more because it quickly turns into an NP problem. So if you're a founder, get that help.
Yeah, for us, I think there's sort of like a bifurcated approach. On one end, Rainmaker has had a lot of PR. We've done a lot of very deliberate branding. We're messaging a lot around abundance, more green, lush future. There's sort of like vibrant, terraform futurism. That has both because of our deliberate good PR and also making lemonade out of some lemons that we were given, has familiarized our tech or our company's name with a lot of the prospective customers in local, state, federal governments, international governments. And that I think is something that is probably, I don't know, time will bear out the results of this, but I think it's probably under indexed on. Like, I think that the mind share that you can occupy is a great resource because then it's not like a golden trick about walking into some like state ENR office and saying like, you ever heard of this crazy technology? And then you have a crazy haircut and then they kick you out because you're a thing. So on one hand, there's that. On the other hand, part of the advice is not clever at all. Part of my advice is just very rote, like networking. And if you network for networking's sake, then you're kind of this like lizard person, slime ball, very weird, not super into that level of like sociopathy in business, but actually just making lots of friends, like earnestly caring about people and then asking, hey, do you know anybody in the state of Colorado that could be relevant? Just the more people. I don't know. There's, especially on the sales side, like you're not gonna get much progress sending emails. Just go in person to meet people, and that will sort along to whatever customer's relevant.
I think that's also the importance. I totally agree that networking is really essential, both proactively and then also if you have a specific aim. But I also think that there's a million people to talk to, and boiling the ocean is really difficult. And so it's also really important that you're doing that networking or trying to make those connections to do your research or network your way to talking to people, as was said, that really know what you're talking about, so that you're able to very specifically target the right people, and you're not wasting a lot of your time trying to network just more generally, but really getting the people who are going to be caring about what you're talking about, and B, are going to be able to actually either be the decision maker or access the decision maker that's going to be able to help you get to where you need to go.
Well, one thing I want to, I guess, go back to a little bit is this. It seems like there's a tension between what we're trying to do for the country. We need more copper, we need more minerals, we need to control weather. We don't want other people, we don't want China to be the only ones to do that. But on the public side, they don't like these things. They don't want the mines in the backyard, but they love the batteries, but they want green energy. How do you go about trying to kind of walk that line with, hey, this is the public good for our country, and get the public bought in? Because inevitably, and especially probably our case, there'll be a lot of bumping into the public and getting their opinion. but also doing something that's positive for international security.
Yeah. I was just going to say pure charisma and charm events on LinkedIn. We all invest a lot on our branding. If you follow me on LinkedIn or follow the company on LinkedIn, it is very deliberate. It's very strategic. And ultimately, going back to my comment about being completely feral, there's things you can control, there's things you cannot control. Our go-to-market is with my investors. The people at the end of the day that I want to be singing our praises are the miners in Arizona drinking beer at the local bar, saying that we have integrity, we're not selling snake oil, and under promise and over deliver. That to me is so much more of a win in public sentiment because that is the lever that's going to be a force multiplier.
Yeah, that I think is we mostly do P2G right now at Rainmaker. So I think we would be able to get away with a lot more tight a group of people from whom we needed approval if it was B2B. But as long as it is B2G, as long as people can call their legislators and say, I don't like the long shirts in the sky that I see, and you should ban privacy. That means that we have a responsibility to interact with folks. And the sort of like 4 phases of the exercise that I would engage in when I'm trying to talk to someone that may not be bought into our tech is probably leading first and foremost just like grace. There's a lot of people that are not going to understand is it enzymatic or bacterial?
Microbial communities.
Microbial communities.
I call them bugs because if they're bacteria, archaea, fungi, it doesn't really matter. Except for fungi, that's where The Last of Us came from. And we want to avoid zombie apocalypses. Please and thank you.
Me too. Yeah, bugs seems a little bit sketchy too. Anyway, but it's awesome.
Seeing clouds seems to it.
Yeah, listen, I've thrown stones from my house. But I think first leading with grace, like I think we all lived in an extraordinarily isolated bubble, probably on the coasts, if not in the coasts, from some university system, or at least proactively educated and actively educating ourselves further, interacting with other technologists. And then when someone hears about one of these innovative technologies that they've never before seen in their life, they probably ought to react with skepticism and concern. Like that is a very reasonable reaction. And so offering grace from the jump and being patient with any concerns that they have, that's number one. Number two is the logic. So on your point about mining, it would be, well, this will secure our national supply chains. This will provide jobs. In Rainmaker's case, we get to ensure that forests stay green, that farmers get to continue farming. There's all the economic points. There's the technical points around safety. The third thing I think actually is just aesthetics. It's just it's like a charm offensive. You cannot be an ivory tower egghead selling some new technology because nobody will trust you. Everybody will hate it, especially as of the last 5 years. And then the last one is just patience, which relates to grace. But these things are going to take a while to get mass adoption. And if you get frustrated in any moments on either a technical point that's unsatisfied or something else to that effect, it's going to fall apart.
I think we're in an interesting time where deep-rooted, unwavering NIMBYism is not the norm. Yeah. Like most folks will, most folks will approach with a little bit up in arms, but there's a lot of opportunity to relay your message, conduct discourse and get people over the line, because I think you are seeing both from the White House, but throughout DC, people promoting industry as our national sovereignty mechanism, right? And so I think NIMBYism, as it was maybe a while ago, I think we're in a unique moment in time where there's an opportunity to go back and forth with folks who may be up in arms about your technology and still find a way to win through, good discourse. So,
Joel, quickly, how important is the, counter positioning against China piece when trying to get some grants?
It depends on the grantor, but certainly on the federal level, it's absolutely critical. With these critical minerals, materials grants, it's very, very explicit, restate the things that they say. China controls X amount, depending, up to 90% in some cases, depending on the mineral in terms of the processing. We need to onshore, we need domestic supply chains, we need industrial competitiveness with other countries, we need national security, and China is at the center of all that. So we are 100% mentioning China. There's a difference in kind of how you present it. You'd be, I don't want to say rapid exactly, you'd be very forceful in the actual applications themselves, because at this point, all the applications are being read by and approved by political appointees who actually have sidelined the technical merit review process. If anyone pays attention to all the crazy executive orders that come out. When we're talking, we also mention those things when we're talking to people at the agencies. Again, depending on the level, you state those with different levels of force, but it's absolutely very, very important when you're talking about China. Or in Europe, we're doing a lot of work in Europe. Russia is a very light issue there. It's not quite as explicit or nationalistic, I guess, in tone, and in a lot of other cases, it's maybe a little bit more implied, but that is a huge geopolitical element that's driving a lot of their policy and around renewables, around decarbonization as well. So I think we're in this less secure and more nationalistic moment. I think in the United States for sure, and really across the world.
I just want to ask how volatile it is, because there are times where, for example, when the whole Panama Canal and trade things happened, it seemed like that was a big deal, and it kind of is maybe still a big deal, but it's not headlines right now. So how volatile is the change in your pitch? Is it like China now is China tomorrow, China forever, or is it just a change every week or so? Like, what are moments where a founder maybe is looking at their strategy and that strategy actually needs to update?
Yeah, I mean, I think the strategy has to stay consistent if the message. And messaging isn't necessarily consistent because we have different audiences, right? If you're writing a grant to the state of California, you might mention that China has X amount of processing. You don't follow that up with we need energy dominance. Whereas with the with federal government now, you absolutely do. So I'd say if you need to reframe your overall strategy based on being in this era, absolutely should do that. But the strategy needs to remain consistent once you set it, and then it's the messaging is different.
But I guess I'm asking, how often is that? I guess I'm asking how often, if at all, does that messaging change? Like, just based on your experience with people, are they genuinely sort of like the same message, same technology, but just messaging back to a different headline? So every week, maybe there's a slight tweak. Is that happening, or is it pretty consistent?
I would say it's pretty consistent with the administration and with the different funder. I mean, when the election happened, we literally. And we had applications that were going to be submitted before the inauguration, but will be reviewed after the inauguration. We were literally rewriting things overnight. We had applications that were due in the beginning of September or mid-November. We literally the next day got on a call with every single one of the founders that we work with and said, okay, we need to rewrite this year. Cool. So it did kind of change overnight, and now it was a little more smoothed out.
But I'll point this out. I mean, I do think much of prior administration, but let's say the last 6 years, there's been a lot of conversation about climate change and decarbonization as a message that you align with to work with the government, particularly where you're being funded by the government. And now that it's pivoted to China, I'd like to make one distinction, and that the conflict, the Cold War scenario with China and their industrial dominance and our stagnation has been an issue. And it is a worthwhile narrative to build a company in support of. And it's not going away. And it's not a policy, this is a relatively bipartisan issue. And so I think, I'm sure there's difference in messaging around decarbonization versus national security, although I think there's a ton of alignment. But I do think for startups in the climate space, being able to tell a very solid and robust compete with China's story. I don't think that will change between now and next election. And regardless of what happens there, I mean, I think it's a very robust story to nail down, how you solve for that. I think both of these founders have their own ways of addressing that, and I think that's sustainable.
And a lot of that messaging actually was we were talking about onshoring and domestic supply chains in the Biden administration as well.
Yeah.
So it's not fully flipped, but a lot of the emphasis, I guess, has sort
It's the emphasis has been focused on onshoring a little bit over I should say a little bit, but they've put the deprioritized climate as the elephant objective and onshoring about that, because they're really tied together. On this idea of just, getting America back on, the innovation track, it's kind of like kicking our asses in many ways. I want to hear your take, I know some thoughts on this, around the importance of why we need to build right now and how much of this is just you trying to inspire the rest of America to realize it is time to actually build technology to be the winner, because otherwise, we're going to be left in the dust.
Oh, unless we're going to be left in the dust.
Otherwise, we're going to be left in the dust if we don't build.
Yeah.
Quick shout out to Earth Tech Talent for sponsoring this live podcast. Assembling the right team is perhaps the most critical thing that you can do to ensure your success, but finding the best talent is hard. At Earth Tech Talent, we make it easy. We'll help you build an incredible team that will rival the Avengers. And on top of making it easy for you, we back our placements with a guarantee. If any hire doesn't work out, we will replace them for free. And on top of all this, we cut all of the bloated costs of traditional recruitment firms, and we've passed along those savings to you, the startup. As a result, our fees are so low that even pre-seed startups can afford them. To get started, reach out to me directly on LinkedIn or email me directly at Silas at Earth, that's ERTH, earthtechtalent.com. That's, again, ERTH, techtalent.com. Okay, back to the show.
I think it's worse than left in the dust. I think that there's a lot of discourse on Twitter. There's a lot of messaging around this. And I'm very self-conscious when I talk about great power conflict between the U.S. and China or about the fate of our civilization, because I think that a lot of people have bastardized that set of talking points and that narrative simply for the sake of riding the wave, right? Like, because you can saber rattle with China in a grants application and be more likely to be approved and accepted. People have jumped on board when they're not actually committed to that idea and its roots. I am Gen Z, and what that means, I think, personally at least, is that I was born into the death throes of a nation and civilization. I think that there is a limited window of opportunity to resuscitate the United States, both industrially, spiritually, to prevent demographic collapse. And if we don't, anything good about the United States, and a lot of people have different versions of what its best virtues are, but anything about it will disappear. If we do not produce more energy, more water, cheaper hardware, better quality of life for people, if we don't give them a vision about why the work they do is worth doing, and not simply for the sake of their quality of life, right? People will flee to cities and then go work a finance job, but still want to kill themselves after making 5 times more than they ever would have in their hometown, and that is insufficient. I truly believe that if we do not have some sort of transcendent end for which we work, beyond just our nation's interests, beyond just getting those bad guys across the Pacific Ocean, then everything is for naught. And so when I think about Rainmaker's work, when I think about all of the deep tech companies and founders that I know, we first want to make baseline quality of life better by producing more water for every single sector of the economy, right? If there's more water, then that not just benefits rural farmers, it not just benefits everybody that enjoys our national parks, it not just benefits all of the industrial sectors that consume water. It doesn't just make your water bill lower if you're in a suburb or a urban residence. It has this manifold effect across the entire economy. And if we don't develop new technologies to do more with less, because we're going to have fewer and fewer people, I think, because other countries are doing more with less and will outcompete us and then will impose their way of life or their worldview, which maybe is more nihilistic or at least not compatible with our ideas about sovereignty and freedom and loving your neighbor and respect for the individual. I think we're pretty cooked. And so, yes, I care about making the United States and the world more abundant. And I don't think that the stakes are like me cashing out in 30, 40 years with some huge exit and then buying like my walnut orchard and ranch in Hawaii. I basically think it's like my grandkids are maybe 5 generations afterwards if we don't radically reorient our industrial capacity and our economy and our spirituality to make our country work for everyone. I'm pretty sure that like my bloodline will end. And so that's kind of the stakes that I think about when I think about deep tech.
I want to add my stuff on it. Sorry. Like what happened when you're done today. I want to add one other layer to this, which is how you rely on strategics, advisors. You talked about bringing in other investors. Grant will put you on the hook with this one too. Which is as founders and as investors too. So how is the relationship in this anti-climate era, this administration, between how your founders rely on you changing? And for the founders in the room, how you rely on you. You talked about, I don't want to deal with the specifics of my grants, or I don't want to deal with some of the networking that they already have, so I'm going to go seek it out. I'm curious how, if at all, has a dynamic between how your portfolio relies on you and the support that you're trying to bring.
I think it's an interesting question. Our stance at 8090 and my personal stance, coming from the background that I come from within industry, started my career in oil and gas, 5 years ago when I made the transfer over to decarbonization. I was a redheaded stepchild. In the climate scene, I think I'm still bear some of that. But the focus for us at 8090 as advisors has always been administrations will change, policies will change, but the incumbents and the industrial titans of today will very likely operate for the next 30 years without fail in aligning your business with what they need and what is transformational for them, as well as the broader industry, I think is the way to win. And so I don't want to toot my horn about what we do as investors to, save our founders, because we don't do that. You guys save yourselves. What I can do is have deep relationships with industrial partners, understanding both their need and where they're trying to move the needle on innovation, and then having that as a resource for very opportune times when a founder is ready to engage with a certain industry or take a certain product to a certain market. Having that wealth of understanding and having done that legwork ahead of time is something that we look to do very well. That's both within our LP base of folks who back 8090, but that's other people too. And many of whom are not investors or have no vested interest in 8090 doing well. We're hounding them for coffees to understand their business a little bit better and understand what they're looking to bring to bear, and then proactively bringing that to our founders to operate in those spaces. That has, I think the importance of that's been received from our founders has changed as we've seen a little bit of the anti-climate era, but the mission has remained the same. And look, I think 5 years from now, that will still be the mission, is to work with industry to find ways for technology to change the game and bring forth abundance and resilience in ways that we have not seen before. And so we're not doing business as usual, but you have to understand business as usual to understand how you optimize and augment that. And you talk about the disrupt is a big term in the Bay Area. I think hardware industrial industries, disrupt is not the term that I would use per se as an entry point. I think it's augment and optimize. And in so doing, you have the opportunity to integrate into real disruption and generating massive outcomes, which is inherently the name of the game for us.
And those industries have never actually been that convinced by climate. When we're looking to help our clients get partnerships with industrials, that is not ever how we've leaded, how we've led in the last 4, 8, 12, 20 years. Those large industrial players are convinced by economics.
Period. Basically.
Yeah, show me money, right? Like I need to know how this makes either grows our top line, reduces our bottom, that or reduces our cost. That's the name of the game. And I wanted to throw this out here for everyone who's in here and whoever listens that's working in climate tech. Like, we have this false narrative around climate tech that it requires subsidy because subsidy has been present. And inherently, if we are doing things innovatively, circularly, or in the 21st century that hasn't been reevaluated, processes that haven't been reevaluated in 100 years, you should be able to compete on costs. We're bringing the best technology in the world to sectors that haven't seen it in a long time. We should be able to compete on costs. And I would like for that to continue to be the mantra of our space as we go forward, because we talk a lot about sustainability when it comes to environment, but commercially, that is sustainable. Looking to the government, looking to solve problems that incumbents don't readily accept exist is not sustainable as an industry.
Yeah, I just want to add to point out that the reason China keeps kicking our butt so much is not because they care about climate above all. They care about lowering costs too, right? So it's actually the core driver of technology innovation. We're going to see more change, like the things like this is doing. Any of the Synvita kind of portfolio companies, those are all just making things cheaper and better, right? That's what Green Tech is all about. That's why I got interested in the first place. It was just all of this innovation is going to save you money. It's going to be more efficient. It's reusing all the wasted things.
We've said this a couple times too, like the China is kicking our butt thing. I want to temper that a little bit, right? Like they are a worthy adversary, but we kick their butt in a lot of things, right? And there's a group of entrepreneurs who are coming into the fold right now that are going to wipe the floor with their technical capabilities, as opposed to what we're bringing here, right? So like I respect the technology and the scale that the Chinese are bringing in terms of production, but I want to make sure everyone here is clear. We have the inherent advantage. We have the tech scene. We have the capital, and we have the people to make a difference. And so I'm very, very optimistic. Although I'm resident of the conflict that came.
Definitely agree on that. Even one interesting anecdote is a couple of people in our office spent some time in China, and the robotics, as everyone knows, is pretty robust. But you'd be surprised, our software ecosystem here on the robotics side is actually still quite impressive. Like we're still much better. So you could have the pretty robot arms, but we can make them work better. So there's still a lot of sort of saving up.
American software. Thank goodness. There we go.
Alex Carp is down.
Something to rally behind. Were there any horror stories behind disrupt an industry? I saw a couple of laughs and any anecdotes to share. If not, that's fine. I just wanted to ask.
Well, no, just on the term disrupt. Right? We do cloud seeding, which is called by some weather modification, aptly so. But the notion of saying, Gary, you don't have to record this part. Like we're disrupting the weather. Horrible framing. That is not what we want to do. I mean, we want to disrupt the aridification of the American West and the ecosystems around the world. That's absolutely true. Like we want to arrest that trend, but disrupt in the same way that it would frighten and like our industry partner would also definitely not be the right verb to describe how we are acting upon the ecosystems of our customers.
Yeah, now let's think about a mine site where something goes wrong, people literally die. They are skeptical of new technologies because they have to be, because safety, like our core value, is number one. You come in there and say, oh yeah, we're gonna move fast and break things. Like they should kick us off site immediately. I actually don't talk to most of our customers because they don't want to talk to a provider PhD. They want to talk to their friends that have 20, 30 years in the mine sites and have steel-toed boots that are not shiny and have their shot training. And I'm proud of that. I recognize that as an orientation. You go in that saying, what's the old adage about tell me what you like about your watch or your pen, and I'll sell you the pen that way. You go in there and say, what are your problems on a mine site? It'll just show you the door right there. You can't make that change through a short-term relationship. Instead, it's relationships that have been nurtured for 20, 30 years where we know the core problems as much as they do. That's what you need to disrupt.
Yeah.
I'd say this is someone who's very proudly TechCrunch to the front last year. One of the only mining companies that got us to build our B2B SaaS platform, which is wonderful. There's main B2B SaaS variation.
Yeah, in general, I think this is a point we can have some wrap up these. What are the biggest challenges you guys see for the industry that going forward now? Because I think we can make the assumption that going forward, the brand should be able to right. We don't want to call ourselves a climate tech company probably. Publicly, maybe privately, and how we talk to our get talent, interested people who are primarily motivated by that. Maybe they're primarily motivated by technology purely. But what are the biggest challenges in the next 4 or 5 years for any of these hardware companies that are trying to really build the future of whatever?
I will start by saying that the traditional VC model and the timelines there are in many ways at odds with what we need to be successful in. And as someone that is VC backed, it is getting punched in the face again. I love our investors, I love it, but it is not a scalable model that is designed to tech. And I think that's going to have to change if we use the actual location.
And I will not defend myself and corroborate. I mean, we are hard tech investors. I had no software background. I couldn't string a software deal if I wanted to. And so I think we are somewhat shaded or shielded from the biases of legacy software investors who are now investing in hard tech. But I do agree. I mean, I think having CFC leasing here is incredible. The opportunity to find non-dilutive ways to scale your business and use venture for what venture is supposed to be, which is to help you grow at catalytic times. But the core business, I think there's going to be a whole cadre of creative financial partners that are going to be very, very critical for climate tech to continue to grow.
I want to jump in real quickly and just point out that this is only all of those other financing models are only possible when you have a very strong business model and it's working. It can't just be based on, hey, we're going to try to make the world greener. Nobody's going to fund that will get you that facility to build.
Well, I don't know. Pacific Fusion got $1 billion technical milestones for Fusion that would be awesome. But I guess so, like on that point, I don't know. I've only been in the game for a few years now, and I feel like everybody has always talked about the limitations of venture, and like venture has a core function, debt has a core function, but nobody has ever delivered on these sophisticated alternative products for companies that are growing. I don't really see much of that anywhere besides like a little bit from General Catalyst, but it's still mostly like a venture PE shop. A little bit from Thrive, but it's still mostly just a venture shop. I actually think like, I don't know. I think we got to figure out how to make it work with the VCs. I think that's probably what has been done, and it probably means that it will be more diluted. There's an enormous opportunity should somebody produce those alternative financial products for startups. But I'm not going to bank on them coming into being because it just happens. And so I think the biggest issue that we have is just like a dearth of engineers. There are far too few electrical engineers for us to like, why do we have this like raw software robotics, but not the best robotics? Well, we actually we just don't have enough robotics guys. We don't have enough electrical engineers. We don't have enough sophisticated mechanical engineers. Those that we do have actually just end up going to build weapon systems because this is the United States. That's the dynamic that we have. We need to train up way more technical talent. That I think is the biggest problem. That I think is one of the biggest rate limiters that we have at Rainmaker. And I think that's what everybody else is doing. Like I'll tell my investors, yes, like how do our advisors help? They'll ask how can we be helpful. We say, I need this kind of electrical engineer. They say everybody else in the portfolio wants that kind of electrical engineer. So yeah, I know this. So that talent rate limiter, especially in light of the fact that it will be harder to get international talent now, is I think going to be one of the things that rate limits innovation for a while.
Also trying to get that exception added.
Yeah, we're just get a vote and hope that they don't blow up.
Yeah, I mean, I agree there. I mean, I have several portfolio companies looking for very niche perception embedded engineers. They don't exist, or they are sophomores right now. So having that group of talent up and coming is going to be great. You mentioned GC and Thrive, right? Like GC and Thrive have the means to be very opportunistic and to employ flexible financing mechanisms, which is awesome. There's some really interesting stuff we talked about offline about what they're doing that I'm a huge fan of. I think that is much needed, but you guys are founders. You mentioned we got to make the VC model work. Like that's how you should think. And I think for us, we're trying to think creatively of like, okay, well, where is there a lot of value and a lack of competition to put money into these generational companies and see a return for our investors? And so we're thinking creatively of like, okay, without the means of come up with GC, like how do I do things like that? Because it's very clear that there's an there there. You just have to be more creative when you come through. But I totally respect, right? Like this is a conversation for us to have to find a way, and you guys are, chewing glass. I think exactly like I said that on Twitter today. Love that. You guys are chewing glass to build your business, and you have existing parameters to do so, and you're doing that. But I can assure you, this is a conversation on our side of the aisle of like, how do we better solve some of these problems while still finding a return for our investors? Make sense?
And I think it's obviously like there are limitations certainly to the venture model, but like it's kind of what we have right now to a large degree. And so what we always tell our clients is to have a more integrated fundraising strategy, right? Like venture absolutely has a place in the ecosystem right now, but you also need to be looking at grants, you need to be looking at that, you'd be looking ahead multiple years, understanding how you're putting together your capital stack now, you're putting together your capital stack in the future, putting together your capital stack for specific projects that you're going to be doing. And so part of mitigating the downsides of not just venture, but every single form of capital has downsides. And so having a properly integrating a fundraising strategy and capital stack is the way to mitigate all those downsides and set yourself up for success in a time where there's just less funding across the board.
I guess I'm more optimistic now that one of the core things you're most excited for in the next 4 to 6 years, you seeing this interest of dominance or whatever is kind of going on in innovation.
Sure, I will. There is a radical reorientation underway of talent right now, and whether it's going to be this or not, I think we'll find out. But there are people I know. In fact, actually, we have this role called forward operating specialist, which is basically, you learn how to fly a drone, you learn how to do repairs on a drone, you go sit on top of a mountain for 6 months, and then you fly it in 5 to 8 snow. And we got a bunch of people from, 3, not a huge bunch. We got 3 people from Blackstone that applied, and they're like, I don't want to work at my finance job anymore. I would like to go do something real. That, and this is not like we were not meeting their salary expectations relative to their current job. There are people from software sector, from finance sector of the economy, from all of these other things that I do not think produce as material outcomes for the climate that are now of greater interest. And I think that because it's flowing into these sort of like deep industrial tech sectors, will have outsized outcomes on our emissions, on energy efficiency, on critical minerals, on water supply. So that's all very exciting. And I think as well with a handful of things underway, maybe it is like the notion of the Apollo programs that we're trying to like revitalize. People do increasingly seem to believe that history is no longer open. We can do great things. And that I think we're seeing across the economy, at least at Rainmaker, right? Like it is this technology that has existed for 80 years. It had all of this promise. It wasn't possible to validate what the results are. It now is with new radar, thanks to electrical engineers. And a lot of people are bought into the notion of a more green and vibrant and abundant world. So that reorientation towards real things and specifically towards abundant water from plastic, I don't know, that's pretty exciting.
I have a new retirement job, which is I want to sit on top of the mountain and fly through the clouds. That sounds amazing. Or now working in a coffee shop. That's cool. I think there's a sense of inevitability that's coming. I think on behalf of all elder millennials and the next generation that's coming up, that overlap of finding purpose, finding meaning, finding what that cause is, whether it is rooted in your legacy, your country's legacy, but just having a sense of purpose. I'm optimistic that we are at the tipping point of something there. And it does feel increasingly inevitable. Not coming.
I think something that very much fires me up and makes my day to day very interesting is how many sub 25-year-old founders I talk to that are highly proficient in very, very high complexity environments and fields. We're seeing the benefits of the information age, and I think young people's ability to be very proficient at technical tasks and be able to then pair that with vision and vigor that you naturally have when you're 25 and not 45, I think bodes incredibly well for us in the go forward. And yeah, it's really easy to bash on like the iPad kids and this, the younger generations on their phones and whatever. But I think the amount of information that a very niche sector of young people have been exposed to and learned, I think allows for innovation to meet all of the other soft skills and energy that's needed to meet the timelines and, this inevitability you talked about. There's a youth movement of folks who are able to make a difference and be proficient enough at a young age to really catalyze certain industries to see new horizons. And I'm loving it, right? I love, the Z fellows, your Teal fellows. Like we have a founder will be back. He was 20. He had just turned 20 when we back then. Doing rare earth refining built for astral mining refinement, and decided, wow, this is super efficient and this would make a ton of sense terrestrial. And he figured all this out as an 18, 19-year-old. We're seeing more and more of these types. I think that bodes really well for the future, and I'm super excited about it.
So I guess in our area, which is public funding, I think there was historically a lot of it was focused on R&D. A lot of it was really focused around renewables and some transportation. And I think with the massive proliferation both in the US and Europe and to some degree in the rest of the world, there was not only an expansion of the total availability of funding and the sizes of funding opportunities, but there was real expansion of the types of technologies that were funded, right? Critical minerals and industrial decarbonization and carbon removal. And even though there has been some traction in some areas, we're still seeing the wide range of types of technologies are still getting funded. And in the climate space, which I've been a member of for 20 years, a lot of these things I've been beating the drum about for a very long time are actually getting paid attention to and thought about if people are going into these fields and there's funding being allocated to them. So that's really exciting. I don't see that trend not continuing at all. And certainly areas like Europe are not only continuing that trend, but actually putting more money behind it as well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really interesting things there. The last thing I just want to point out is that it seems across all of these kind of different subsectors and just the different perspectives on how to build right now, there's a lot of really exciting and inspiring things to build towards, and they don't necessarily compete with each other. Right? Some people might put emphasis on one more than the other, but as founders who care about climate, or maybe we mostly care about national security, whatever it is, all these things really need to play together so we can lean into them and inspire a lot of people. So there's a lot of us, there's not, it's like we can't have that at the expense of this. Like we can do these things together. So I really appreciate your time. I think this could have gone on for another hour, but we'll probably stop here. Let's give a quick round of applause for our members. And before we lose everybody, can you guys, the slides in the back there? you move us? All right. So the best way to learn is to write down something that you learned. So scan this code, and it'll take you to a LinkedIn post. Assuming it's on correct, I think good. It'll take you to a LinkedIn post that was made and during the talk, and just comment your favorite takeaway, something that you want to recall, something that you really like, the biggest insight. We'll give you a moment to do that. And by the way, if it doesn't work, then I'll have to fire our highly paid interns. Okay, it worked great. Just kidding. Our interns, if we could have them, we would be totally sunk. In the meantime, are you guys going to stay for a photo cell? Does anybody have any questions for that? I'll go with Jesse. I'm not actually. You go first. Your hand up for one.
Sorry. So going back to the conversation on China, one of the things that comes to my mind, first off, is I've been hearing lately how many more patents are being generated in China, but founders seem to be less sophisticated in raising money outside of the China ecosystem. One thing that I feel like ties in that I don't hear talked about as much is the power of corporations in the US and the fact that we've sort of pushed R&D out of corporations into our venture ecosystem. And that's a weird sort of thing that I'm trying to touch the dots on. And I'm curious what your perspective is on how startups and founders in the US fill that R&D role and how that might be more or less competitive in this China versus US conversation.
Really interesting point. You mentioned Chinese companies struggling to raise venture capital, and I immediately thought of like the Bill Bear meeting Italian stat. I thought it was funny. You don't know what I'm talking about? Look it up. Anywho, I do think justifying R&D for publicly traded companies in the U.S., given the way that our companies are structured versus China, where they're state-owned, I think there's a natural. You have to invest in R&D with no line of sight to positive outcome for a very long time.
Yeah.
If you're a publicly traded corporation who's competing for institutional and investor capital. And so I do think we have a pretty interesting setup in the US they do not have in China through the venture ecosystem and the way that innovation happens from outside and engages internal.
Yeah.
That I do think there are long-term ramifications that I think are long-term wins where you don't get that very short sensation where you're a state-owned organization that also does R&D, that also is like, it has inherent short-term advantages that I think are limiting factors long-term for real sustained innovation.
Yeah.
And so that's how I would draw those out. I think there are obviously ways to improve that. If large organizations are not investing in R&D, but they do have innovation teams, it's imperative for those innovation teams to be able to reach across the aisle to entrepreneurs and understand what they're doing. I mean, a bunch of what I see in the innovation CVC space is not easy to work with. And I come from that space. Not easy to work with, which I think is a major problem in the industry and one that I think is, going to have to be fixed for us to continue to ramp up.
Yeah.
Well, but it begs an interesting question too, right? Like, why would Bell Lab assume that you have to have something monopolistic to justify investing in R&D? Why would Bell Lab succeed and Google X totally flop? I don't know the answer, right? Because Google X has plenty of cash, they don't produce that much stuff.
Well, okay. So fill me in on, Bell Labs, more independent, Google X, tied inherently, Alphabet is doing a lot of things. I could give you a lot of
The economy was completely different then too. The things that were force functions there, the pipelines for education, the workforce in general, completely different. We can get into this tomorrow.
Could you comment quickly on the CVC point you made? I know you guys have good partners, and I'm curious, is that the fire? Is the CVC actually care about innovation?
We are very fortunate to have some incredible CVCs. There are some CVCs that are not great and not awesome and just want to talk to you and take your ideas and turn them over and give them to your competitors. So it's definitely a mixed bag. You have to go into their eyes wide open. We have an amazing CBC or two coming for next round. Very excited to work with them. We have lots of press releases with CBCs. You can pull end up with them and see great ones we're working with.
Definitely a great follow, brother. If you guys are following, you should definitely give that one. I think we should wrap it here, guys. Sorry, Jesse. No question for you. But last thing, I think, can you get the next slide, guys? We should, if you do not follow the Substack already. This one? The Substack? Okay, cool. This is the link to post, but can we get the Substack link? There you go. If you do not follow the Substack already, get it so that you can hear all the new episodes that come out. There's a lot of really great content on the pod. But I think we'll wrap it. You guys can feel free to hang out. We got plenty of refreshments on, I think. And we'll have to get you guys to get by 4:30, so hang out to that. All right, round of applause.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to today's show. If you enjoyed it, there's one thing that you can do to help us really, really massively. Send this episode to 2 of your friends in climate, 2 people who specifically really should hear this message. The only way that we grow this is through you sharing. Well, at least until the algorithm shines its grace upon us one day. All right, thank you so much for tuning in. See you soon.